Welcome everyone to the Emergent Essence Dynamics webinar number 19. It is August 15th, 2020, and our focus today is putting myths to rest, vulnerability and authenticity. So as I was saying just before we started the recording, I've been working in the coaching, leadership, self-development industry for over 15 years. And as an actor before that, and these words get bandied about a lot: vulnerability and authenticity. They're fast becoming buzzwords. And over my years of experience, I've seen them defined differently. I've seen them ill-defined, misused, misrepresented, distorted. And that can lead us into some traps and some trouble. And I felt that it was important to challenge those myths and clean up some of the definitions and then redefine them through the lens of emergent essence dynamics, which is founded upon fostering resilience and autonomy in an individual. And if there is a poor definition of vulnerability and authenticity, there's a risk that that individual loses resilience and loses their autonomy. And I'll explain that in more detail as we go along, how that can happen. And both of those words are in the name of genuine self-expression. I mean, in all personal growth, everyone wants to freely express themselves. And so there gets attached to that this need to be vulnerable and need to be authentic in order to be genuinely self-expressed. So there's a clean way to approach that, and then there are some distortions in there, and I wanted to clean those up. So one of the main questions is, why is there such a push for vulnerability and authenticity? And can that weaken the will if it's pushed hard, if there's a need for it? We'll look at that. Why do we need to be more vulnerable? And one main question is, well, can vulnerability and authenticity be a performance? How do we tell the difference when it's genuine or not genuine? And why would it be performed? What is there to gain if it's a performance, okay? So I'm gonna, in EED, we talk about game level, dream level. I'm going to clarify that, what exactly those two levels are. But these are two levels of interaction, two ways of relating, basically from resilience or not from resilience. And vulnerability and authenticity exist at both levels. And I'm gonna make distinctions of what is the difference when vulnerability and authenticity is a game or when it is absolutely genuine and fluid, and why. What makes it fluid and genuine, okay? So what I'm hoping that you walk away with is some good distinctions, a good knowledge of some of the traps that are out there, how to clean that up, and how to, in practical ways, get yourself in a genuine state of let's say authenticity and natural vulnerability. And by the way, I'll just say it up front, in emergent essence dynamics, I don't use those two words. I just don't. I have other words that I'll use to describe what I believe people are going for, okay? And the reason I don't use them is because there's so many different definitions and associations and assumptions out there. So anyways, there's where I'm at. That's what we're going to explore over the next hour. So what specifically are we discovering? We're going to go through some of the common myths and traps surrounding vulnerability and authenticity, and then I'm going to redefine them through the lens of resilience and autonomy. They do take on a different look and feel when we look at vulnerability from resilience, authenticity from resilience, and how do you add autonomy into that? Simple tools for connecting to your inner source and then being congruent from there in your thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. So a big part of authenticity is really about congruency, but there's more to it than just being congruent, and we'll discuss that in a bit. And then how can you hold boundaries while still remaining open, connected, and transparent? How can you be expressive without feelings of censorship or self-censorship, or without feeling like you're walking on eggshells, okay? So, because one of the main traps of vulnerability, authenticity, is there's an assumption that there should be no boundaries and no masks, that we should just be completely raw and exposed. But actually, that's not realistic. And there's a way to do it while maintaining resilience, while yet still being open and transparent. And in fact, you can be vulnerable, authentic, and still create boundaries, still wear masks. All right. And that might sound strange to some people listening. I don't know. Okay, so there I've done my introduction. What are your comments or questions that come up after hearing it?
I have some comment or question.
Yeah.
Okay, so from my perspective, the terms vulnerability and authenticity, they stem from our, let's say, old world, from our legacy patterns. We try to fix our legacy, our dysfunctional patterns, and then we use these two words to describe how to fix them, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the two words that you use, resilience and autonomy, they stand for themselves. They stay for themselves. So they are independent in the universe, you can say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is how I would differentiate this. You agree with that?
Yeah, oh, very much so. And if I can go further with what you're saying, like you're talking about fixing our legacy or repairing our patterns or things like that. And we'll use vulnerability and authenticity or those words as a way to fix. So there are conditions put upon it. What is vulnerability supposed to look like? What is authenticity supposed to look like? How are we supposed? When there are conditions put upon it, then we start following new rules, new behaviors, but in fact, it doesn't fix anything. It actually aggravates more of this same dysfunctional game because we're actually adding dysfunction to how we're perceiving vulnerability and authenticity. What you say about resilience and autonomy, it stands on its own. Yes, because these are unconditional states. And I'm going to go into further defining, well, how is that? How does it happen that resilience and autonomy are unconditional? What I'm going to say up front is, when we enter a state of resilience and autonomy, the natural byproduct is vulnerability and authenticity. So we're not going for it. Yeah. It's naturally happening, okay?
It's a side effect, you can say, yeah?
Yeah. So what I want to be clear here is, how do we tell the difference when vulnerability and authenticity is manufactured or performed or done under some obligation, or when it is a natural effect, a natural state of being? All right, there's a difference. It's natural and willing. Okay. Couple people joined. Welcome. Were there any other comments, questions before I proceed? Just on based on the intro here. Any other things? Okay. And feel free to ask questions as we go along. Feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind. And I love the interaction. And I would love to have some debate here, because many people have many ideas about what these are, okay? And some of the things I say you may not agree with, okay? So just to be brief, what is emergent essence dynamics? What does it do? What it really is doing is it's emerging fractal patterns from relationships and shifting those patterns in a resilient space, because it is the patterns that are driving the person in the issue. And that is what then creates transformation is we're not changing the person, we're not changing the situation or the circumstance. We're looking at how is the person in relationship with the situation, what's the pattern that they're following. Then when we get them in a more fluid, resilient state, they're able to let things go and shift and transmute, and then both the person and the issue will change. So we're really pinpointing the fundamental dynamics that human beings follow, these fundamental patterns. And they work on the large and small scale. It's basically the same pattern over and over and over again. And we need to discover what those root patterns are. So this is applicable for coaching, leadership, mediation, facilitation, healing, personal growth, because it is all in the name of, let's say, self-awareness, self-improvement, all right? So before we transform anything, we want to focus on resilience. And so this is where the vulnerability and authenticity issue comes in, all right? That from a resilient space, there is natural vulnerability and natural authenticity. Then we want to focus on what are the patterns. And people can use vulnerability and authenticity as part of their pattern to try and fix things, okay? Or to try and improve. And what it might be creating is something false. Like we said before, it may be actually aggravating the dysfunction. They may be using vulnerability and authenticity in a dysfunctional way because they're coming from a non-resilient place. Then once we're entered into that resilient space, it's easy to shift the patterns because we are in a far more fluid state. And that will transform multiple issues. I know many of you, but are there questions or comments that come up here in the lens of the way this works with perhaps vulnerability and authenticity? And I mean, that's what this all is about. So, okay, so let's define, like, what is authenticity and what are some myths surrounding it? So what have you heard? I'm sure you guys have heard a lot. You guys have thoughts around this. This word gets bandied about a lot in leadership programs, personal growth programs, coaching programs, and beyond.
For me, authenticity always feels like something that is true beyond the game level. So true beyond means, true beyond the conditions that I tried to fulfill. So a lot of it is congruency, I would say. And I look for it in social relations. Like when I have the feeling when I say something that is authentic, or when I'm authentic, then it is especially good. It's just the right thing to do in everything.
Okay, so then let's back that up. So what is it to be authentic? What does that mean to be authentic? Because we hear that a lot. Be authentic, be in authentic relationship, right? So
it's extremely difficult. But when you achieve it, then you're not faking it. You're not trying to make things up.
Okay, so be genuine, be honest, be truthful.
That enables a growth beyond the pathetic self.
Okay. What does that look like, being authentic? What are some symptoms, some ways to tell someone is being authentic? Anyone can jump in here.
A high level of awareness of self in how it behaves and how the own behavior affects people around, relationship around.
Great, and Christina is saying here it's an alignment between what you are feeling, saying, and doing in each moment. So, and as Paul mentioned, congruency. So you are congruent in what you're saying and you're doing. And I'll go further to say it's what you're thinking, feeling, saying, doing, okay? It all lines up. So when we're congruent, then there's no double signal. So therefore, hey, that must be authentic, okay? Be yourself. Don't you hear that a lot? If you want to be authentic, just be yourself. Now, I'm going to pull back to what you said, Alina, about a high level of awareness. Well, how aware are you of yourself? Who are you really? Like, we can be many, 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 many things. So who decides what it is to be myself, right? I could be completely myself and you could say to me, I've never seen that side of you before, right? So
would you agree that in the context of leadership, to be authentic means to fully lead myself, in the sense I don't care what others think of what I'm doing. I have my vision, I have my purpose, I have my inner drive, and I do what I do, and I don't give a shit what others think. Then I'm authentic because I'm truly connected to my inner self. Is it all of the story, or is it some
well, and there's a trap in that. So then I'm a leader and I'm going to do it my way or no way, and I could be doing something very destructive. Do you see? But I'm claiming to be authentic. So there's got to be something more than that. How do you counterbalance that, right?
Self-awareness.
The awareness of what's out here, in here, exactly, and then I'll go further and say there's even more to it than that. So, but yes, it's true what you're saying, Mark. That's out there, right? I'm guided from within, and there's got to be more checks and balances. Otherwise, I could become a dictator. Do you understand? And I have full right of conviction. I'm being authentic, but I'm making a mess, and I'm destroying things, right?
Or a person offending everyone around. Yeah.
Well, then I would like to add one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to add that it needs also a high level of empathy, obviously, a high level of empathy. I see you seeing me, this kind of loop, that Thomas Hübel is speaking a lot about, and so obviously it's not like I do what I do and I don't care what others. Right. That's not what I mean. So I perceive my environment. I see the environment. I see the system. I see the ecosystem around me, and then based on this, I do what I do. Okay.
Yep. And so there needs to be an awareness out there, back in here, a reciprocity, back and forth. And I see a trap in that too, where what if I'm only seeing what I want to see? I'm only believing what I want to believe, but I can claim that I'm aware of what's out there, right? So there's that too. So there's got to be something more.
I find that what you bring from the moment is what you build up on. You don't build up on anything that you bring to the moment, but purely from what is there.
Yeah.
You reach an authenticity in your own action and thought.
Well, this is why people then add in the vulnerability issue to address what Mark is saying as well, is, I need to be aware, I need to be vulnerable, and I need to be, my inner guide. So how am I reconciling being myself, being vulnerable, but still have authority? This becomes a difficult kind of back and forth dance. And what I'll add to that is, I've heard it so many times. Oh, you're not being authentic. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, you're not being vulnerable with me. Well, what do you mean? Well, you're not showing me your tears.
Oh.
I've literally heard that many times. And I'm saying, so in order for me to be authentic, I have to be soft. I have to be agreeable. I have to be showing my emotions and my tears. Now suddenly I'm being authentic. That's an image of what authenticity is supposed to look like. I could be very, very, very upset and angry with someone and telling them exactly how I'm feeling and exactly what I'm thinking. And they'll say, well, that's not authentic. And I say, well, what do you mean? Because you're not being vulnerable. Of course I'm being vulnerable. I've taken my mask off right now, but suddenly you're telling me I can't be negative, right? So there's a myth of don't be negative. You got to be honest, completely transparent, agreeable. You got to be understanding. But what if what I'm saying is honest and transparent, but it doesn't agree with them? Okay. That's not what I want to hear. All right. Then I'll get the criticism I'm not being authentic. I'm not behaving in the way they want me to behave because they have an idea of what authentic looks like. And everyone will have a different idea or image. Okay. What are your thoughts on what I'm saying here? Yeah, go ahead. Benjamin, you were going to say something.
Well, hello from my side.
Hello, hello.
I feel it's just creating the polarity from the other side. So so two things. First thing is that authenticity, it's a positive attributed thing. So there's this cloud which is completely positive, and you can beam me up to that cloud, giving you superiority, but to tackle situations. It has some resemblance of being God, might be. So you're a better person if you do that. So leading to you have that cloud of positivity. And you should strive for that at the very exclusion of all the negative stuff. However, that's just creating the negative stuff. So debunking that message.
So what you're saying, in order,
same polarity, right?
Yeah. So in order to be a good person or a better person, you must be authentic and follow this list of ingredients of what it means to be authentic, and then you're a good person. And then you can get rewarded with that.
But what is the implicit assumption you're working on now? You're basically reinforcing that implicit assumption that you don't accept it. So you're just putting more of the stuff you don't want under the carpet. It's getting more and more instead of less.
Right. So you're aggravating a game. You're aggravating a polarity. You're creating more rules and conditions. And if those rules and conditions aren't followed, then it's easy to say you're not being authentic because it doesn't fit the description. So some people say be authentic because they want you to come down to their level. They want to all feel connected and equal to you when you are being authentic with me, which means match my level, match me, match my criteria. Okay, until you do that, I can't connect with you and you're not being authentic. I cannot trust you. You're not credible, all of this. So it's cutting off relationships. So in fact, when I say to you, be more authentic with me, I'm controlling the relationship. I'm controlling you. Does that make sense? And I'm taking higher status. I might come from low status, saying, oh, Benjamin, you think you're so great and you're so arrogant and you're not being honest with me, you're withholding information, you're intimidating me, and all I wanted you to do is be authentic so I can feel comfortable working with you. You need to be more authentic with me. You need to show me your emotions. You need to show me your tears. You need to tell me all your secrets. You need to be more vulnerable with me because otherwise I can't connect. There's a double standard going on. Right? In all that time, what have I shown you? Nothing except criticism.
So we use it as a device.
I'm using it as a device, a weapon,
or against
or a shield.
Someone, something, instead of just an attribute describing a characteristic, a property of a person, which might be a different thing, which might be even okay. Would you go with that it's okay as an attribute? Yeah. But it should be used with caution as a device.
And the one thing I haven't done was given you any benefit of the doubt. What if what you're saying to me right now is authentic? It is. your thoughts and feelings. Because I'm not actually looking over there to see your level of congruency. I'm not even sensing within myself, does this have the ring of truth to it? I'm just deciding, I'm passing judgment. So I'm saying these are things that can happen when authenticity gets weaponized. Now, you may agree or disagree with this statement, but if I'm authentic with you, I can't be blamed for doing wrong. If I'm with you, I can now be forgiven for something that I've done.
Special powers number 2.
Yes. So, oh, I'm telling you the truth and being honest and open. Oh, I failed, I made a mistake, and now I'm being so open and vulnerable and emotional with you. Please don't hold me responsible because I'm being so authentic with you. Please don't shoot me, kill me, criticize me because I'm being so authentic. Has anyone heard something like that before? I'm seeing some nods. So again, this is when it can be weaponized. Or why would I want to be authentic? So I can feel safe with you. Right? Because you won't attack me. This is when vulnerability and authenticity get collapsed. Sorry, you were trying to get something in there, Benjamin.
Yeah, just a short one. Are bows a shield or not?
They're a shield and a weapon.
Oh, so bows in combination.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So you can actually use a shield as a weapon. So where's
Well,
the
sure. I mean,
distinction
well, I'm holding up my authentic card. Hey, man, I'm being authentic with you. Why would you criticize me?
So
and I'm putting a guilt trip on you, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's a shield and a weapon at the same time. Yeah. I've seen this done many, many, many times. This is where it moves into emotional manipulation, okay, and a control mechanism. There's more myths. Are there anything else that come to mind around myths, around authenticity and how it's used or weaponized or co-opted? Anything else out there? These were a few that I thought of. I'm not saying it's a complete list. Okay. So then let's define it. Let's get into a clean definition of what it is to be authentic. So I'm going to define authentic from my musical background. When you're doing an authentic performance, playing on authentic instruments, playing on or referencing an authentic manuscript, okay? This means it's an original. It's according to the original source. You're playing music on the original instruments of the time, okay? It's an authentic score. It's an original. So according to source. This is very, very important. We'll come back to that in a bit. It also means authorship, being the author of something, being the originator or the initiator of something, which means it also means from mastery of self. So this would be self-discipline, self-awareness. To be authentic is to be a master of self, all right? That's gonna go into congruency, self-discipline, connected to source. You are the cause. You are the author of the circumstance. You are the author of what's happening in the relationship. This can bleed into then when you are being authentic, you are being responsive to all the effects that you cause, all right? Autos in Latin means self. Entes means form, a form. So you are forming yourself from yourself. You are the master of yourself. So what does this shift for you, or what does this spark for you when we define authentic in this way?
I very much like the term authorship. It indicates that we are talking here about a systemic perspective on authenticity, yeah, and yeah.
So this has nothing to do with what you're showing me. This has to do with where you're coming from and what you're responding to within yourself and around yourself. And that you're not going to put conditions upon me. You're not going to manipulate me according to your own self-mastery, right? This is why it's important to remember that you're the author, you are the originator from source, and you are a master of self from source. And we need to define, what do we mean by source? And in EED, we talk about getting to source level, which is your level of all potential. This is a level of unity consciousness. This is a level where there no longer is ego. You are the pure essence. All right. We don't necessarily live at that level, but when we come from that source, then we can begin authoring ourselves, forming ourselves according to source. So we become a clean expression of that source in the guise of self, of myself. What does that bring? That brings a natural benevolence. It brings a natural resilience. It brings natural autonomy. It brings a natural level of, I'm the master of my domain. I'm the creator of my world, and you are included in it, and I'm responsive to that. Is this making sense, what I'm saying? Any comments there? So how do we get there? It's congruency is one of the first ingredients. And what do we mean by congruency? We want to line up our thoughts, emotions, and our physicality. Physical can mean the body movement, the body gesture, the words, plus the actions, okay? So what I'm saying and doing, the way I'm presenting in my posture, my body language, all lines up with what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. So if I'm sad, I feel sad, I think sad, and I express sad. It's very clear. There's no doubt, okay? It's direct. It's not duplicitous. So when that all lines up, we can access our essence, our all potential, and access that source, all right? So we can get beyond ego and access our source of all potential. And then that starts channeling through. And this is where we become a clean expression of source. This is where we are now acting and thinking and feeling according to source. This is where we now are being authentic. Now, does that mean I can be negative? Does that mean I can be sad? Does that mean I can be angry? Or must this be positive? That's a question I put out to you guys.
Well, it's beyond, well, it's not beyond polarities. As on game level, we would still be entangled in a polarity, but in a polarity, the behavior would be kind of the sweet spot that enables an access to the dream. So it's congruent. It enables congruency with dream and game level as it comes from source.
This is the big difference. This goes back to the question, can authenticity be performed? Yes, it can, when it's only this. Thought, emotion, body lined up, okay? This is what actors do. This is what I was trained to do as an actor, is be congruent in my thoughts and feelings and actions. But I could be still expressing a complete lie. So I can look authentic, but I am not connected to source, okay? A deeper level of authenticity is where it's a clean expression of source, a clean expression of what's coming from essence. And essence in its nature is benevolent. It is creative. It's resilient. It's autonomous. And it's an expression of all potential. So yes, it can be an expression of anger, but that anger is still based in benevolence, love, unity, okay? It is not about being duplicitous. It is not about trying to trick you into believing something so I can control you or use you, okay? That's playing a game, a control game. Or look at me, I'm being authentic. Please recognize that. That is a condition, that's a game. I'm trying to gain validation, okay? When I'm authentic from source, I am what I am, and I'll respond to your reactions without needing you to react a certain way. I just create from your reactions. Is that subtle distinction making sense for you? Of I am what I am, no need to apologize, and I'm responsive to what happens around me. I'm not checking for, do you approve? I'm not checking for, am I leading you the way I want to lead you, meaning control. You're nodding, Alina, so just want to hear your thoughts on that. Or if anything comes up.
I often observe that this kind of behavior, when you're in conversation with a client, and you're just articulating what you see right in front of yourself, and you're doing it in a way that the client is totally okay with it. It might be understood as a provocation if you don't really come across authentic enough, like from source enough. But if you come from source in an articulation of you are just right, you're just holding back from leading the life you want, for example, the client often then just says, well, yeah, that's true. Even though it might have been a thing he was not humbled enough to say before. But when you're coming from a resilience or source connection in this way, it works often.
So let's add something, that there is a natural congruency and a natural acceptance of self and other.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking on let's say, fresh managers, people who just step into a management position from a technical position, let's say. And those people do not have this connection with the essence yet in the new position. Practically immediately they realize it's a change, and they don't have trust they can do the new job as a manager. And it's so much fake in it at the beginning, until they actually start having success. And while having success, start working and collaboration with the people around, with the other managers, and that success actually re-enhance their connection to their own source. And it's their way to become authentic in the place.
So there's a natural relaxation that happens.
Absolutely. It's a natural relaxation that happens. And it's one of the biggest thresholds any fresh manager has to actually overcome, to jump. And not many see it. Some people cannot relax there. They are just fighting.
They're missing that connection to a source foundation within themselves, that inner source.
That's why I was actually smiling.
Yeah. So let's look at this. So what makes someone authentic? We're talking about this. So there's a natural congruency, but beyond that, there's also a connection to source. So it's a congruent expression of that natural inner source. There is natural transparency, meaning there's nothing for me to hide or deny. All right? I don't need to be defensive. I don't need to be checking. All right? Am I doing a good job here? Okay? I do what I do. This is important. There is a natural generosity of spirit. Again, I'm not asking for proof or validation. It's I am what I am, and there's a generosity of spirit. I'm not expecting anything in return, which means there's a natural humility about who I am and what I'm doing. And I'm not afraid to say, hey, I actually don't know what to do, but I will find the way. I can figure it out. I don't need to pretend like I've got it all under control. I am so resilient that I can say, hey, at this moment, I'm not sure, but I will find the way. I have the willpower, all right? Here's another important thing. There is an allowance of boundaries. I can be authentic in the situation, connected with source. I'm not expecting you to be equally authentic with me. I'm not making it conditional. Just because I'm authentic means you have to be authentic. When I'm coming from that connection to source, I'll know, I'll sense whether there's unity or not unity with you. And in fact, by me dropping into that space, you're naturally going to drop into that space with me. It becomes compelling.
It's also about this generosity.
That's right.
Not waiting, not expecting from the other to,
exactly.
to prove their authenticity.
I can be generous, and if you want to block me, refuse, or I'm okay with that, because I can work with it and respond to it. There is a sense of being unconditional here. All right.
So by being connected to my source, I'm not depending on specific situation to go into a specific direction or a person to act in a specific manner. So right. I'm released from potential need to manipulate them with the weapon, shield, authenticity, whatever, as you elaborated earlier, Troy, with this guilt trap also.
Yeah.
For instance. So it's razor, you're connected inwards, then trying to attain something which is inwards by manipulating and doing stuff outside with people.
I'm allowing you to have just as much as your free will and autonomy as I am allowing myself. Okay.
It has nothing to do with necessarily with you or with me.
That's right.
Expression of source. I just get a lead or I get a feel of the situation and what's the next logical step in the communication of the game that we are in. And either I'm going to say it or the next person going to say it. It doesn't matter.
So there's no expectation of how you're supposed to behave towards me.
So it's, that's
like how I should be in the eyes of others.
I personally find allowance of boundaries not enough here. It's more than that. It's just by my impression. So it's a respect of boundaries. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
It's finding the sweet spot where boundaries are being respected, but at the same time are not limiting.
I'm not, when I say allowance and boundaries, there's a respect of your boundaries. I'm even allowing boundaries with myself too. Just because I'm being authentic doesn't mean you can, enter the secret room of my house, right? I mean, I can authentically say, hey, no, I'm able to say no to things. It doesn't mean just because I'm being authentic, I'm going to say yes to everything, okay? Because if that violates the source, and I'm coming from the source, it's not about violating my ego, right? So I'm allowing boundaries to happen, and it's not going to disturb me, upset me. I create from it, all right? It's a very subtle thing. And so, yes, there's a respect of boundaries. The effect is there is a natural resilience. I don't need to perform. I don't need to be. I don't need to put conditions on things. I'm naturally resilient, so I'm prepared to create from whatever is happening around me. there is autonomy where I'm maintaining free will. I'm not depending on your approval, or I'm not depending on controlling you or me being controlled. There's nothing for me to prove. I don't even need to ask you, am I being authentic enough? I don't even need to ask myself, am I being authentic here? Okay? There is nothing to prove.
Authenticity is not a topic.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Because source, when there's a clean connection to source, source is congruently being expressed, there's an automatic authenticity here. So it's not even questionable. This is important. The congruency, the ability to be congruent means you're delivering your promises. If you are acting, feeling, thinking, acting, and saying, right, what you do, it all matches up, then you can track somebody's congruency with, are they delivering on their promises? Okay, I can tell you in an authentic way, hey man, yeah, we're going to get together next week for coffee and I'll text you, you know, by the, you know, tomorrow or sometime. And then they completely drop it. You say, hey, when are we getting together? They don't respond. Like, they could have said it authentically in the moment, but no, they didn't deliver on their promises. And then they didn't own up to it. Okay, so no, they weren't being authentic. So you track the congruency over time too. Are promises being delivered? And there is transparency if and when those promises cannot be delivered. Meaning, hey, I know I said yesterday we would have coffee. My schedule's changed. Look, I can't do it this week, but let's do it next week and let's put it in the calendar now so I can schedule around it. See, that is transparency. I'm still delivering on the promise. Or I say, you know what, it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. So I'm responding with ability. This is different than responsibility. This is not about the ability to respond. I'm responding from competence, creativity, willpower, know-how, intelligence, compassion. Do you understand what I mean by responding with ability? I'm not just responding and saying, sorry, man, and then I abandon you and leave you in a lurch. No, I'm responding to create the next moment with you.
So how is transparency not an extension or an effect of congruency?
Well, we're saying, hey, be truthful. Now, you'll see in a moment here, there's different levels of where we can come from for truth. What is truth? Congruency and transparency go hand in hand, meaning transparency means there's nothing I need to hide or deny. Mm-hmm. Here's also what transparency says. I can't answer that question because that is, you know, that is not information you need to know. That doesn't mean I'm lying, okay? And there's a really fine line there. But transparency does not mean I divulge all my secrets, okay?
Yeah, so is congruency inside yourself? And
yes.
Transparency is the communication between the inside and the other people.
That's right. There's a transparency of communication, meaning being direct, forthright. I'm not evading or avoiding. I'm being direct. And if I say, look, man, I cannot answer that question. Why? Because I can't divulge that information to you. I'm sorry. You're not in a position to hear that information. That's actually being transparent. I'm not just saying, oh, because I have to keep it secret because I have to keep it from you. Or, oh, no, I'm avoiding that answer. No, I'm just being direct. Do you understand? Or I'm too transparent and you say, well, why are you doing that? Well, because I didn't want to. It's not, oh, because I forgot. It's just being direct and forthright. Okay.
Yeah. I really like this term congruency, and I'm wondering if it means that so if if I think of myself having different levels of self, yeah, like consciousness, like mental level, so different levels, and I need this congruency across the levels. Then the connection to source could also be seen as an effect of the inner congruency, isn't it?
That's true. In order for me to connect to source, I've got to become congruent first, right? If we look back at this slide here,
okay.
When I line up my thoughts, emotions, and physicality, I now have access to source, because source can come in, it can come through me. But if I mismatch my thoughts with what I'm feeling and what I'm doing, that source gets interrupted. It can't come through because I block it.
So source is outside of myself. It's outside, yeah?
Or larger than myself, greater than myself. It's my greater potential, my higher mind, like it's beyond my own personality and ego. You could say it's a universal consciousness, collective consciousness, whatever you want, divine inspiration, but I'm calling it infinite awareness and all potential. And then we focus that into ourselves and it becomes more specific, right, within. And if we are congruent, we keep it pure and clean. When we're incongruent, we'll take that information from source and start distorting it, right? So that's where you get the natural transparency, and you're having an inner congruency and then an outer congruency. This means where what I'm saying and what I'm doing matches up, and over time I'm delivering on my promises, and because I'm connected to source and I'm resilient, I'm able to be transparent if and when I cannot deliver. Okay.
I'd like to add here that the essence is fractal. So in the moment, it's manifesting itself, or it is seeable in different aspects of the moment. And it's fractal because it's quantum in nature. That means we're here on a level of waves and frequencies, which only condense down to then thoughts and feelings. And
so let's just say then, when I'm in an authentic state, when I'm congruent, when I'm connected to source, then I'm tuned in to a clean frequency, and I'm able to vibrate at that frequency and send that frequency in a clean way. So then you know exactly what to tune into with me. It's not a distortion. So I actually then can harmonize more effectively, and I can tune into your frequency. I'm not expecting you to tune into my frequency. That's what I mean by the natural generosity. This is what will create the credibility and the trust. It will be felt, not shown. And that is built over time. Any further comments on there? I know we're hitting the top of the hour here, and I only got through authenticity. But...
I like how you pointed it out. Like when I come from authenticity, the other person knows where to connect and how to tune in. That's really cool, because it shows the effect of
they know how to deal with you. Okay, you're solid, you're concrete. There's no guesswork involved, right? It's just very direct. Hey, I'm 178 centimeters tall. I weigh 59 kilograms. Okay, I have blonde hair at my tips, darker hair at my roots. I'm not telling you, oh, you know, I'm kind of tall and I'm medium weight and I'm, you know, I have kind of a few different colors in my hair. You don't have a concrete specific idea of what or who I am, okay? And I'll say, well, I'm not so great today. what are you? Do you understand? Like when you're authentic, you're also concrete, you're specific. I mean, we talk about this a lot more in the use of language in our module 3 when you're conducting essence. But I mean, this is the same. You're also concrete and specific. And you're direct, you're forthright. It's clean. There's just a feeling of it's clean. You know exactly what you're tuning into. The other person knows what they're tuning into with you.
And the other person has a feeling, or the other side has a feeling of it needs to be authentic too, otherwise it will be obvious that it's lying.
Well, I'll tell you another thing is that when one person is coming from a resilient, congruent, transparent, consistent place with generosity of spirit, they're connected to source, it's really hard for the other person to be deceptive. Their deceptions start to unravel. Because you'll see in comparison all the inconsistencies. It's like shedding light and the rats just scatter. So it's really coming from light and the darkness dispels. And it's actually not very hard to do. So shall we move on? Because this is where then vulnerability comes in. And by the way, if you need to drop out, that's okay, because I know I'm at the top of the hour. And I'll try to go through this quickly.
I mean, you said we can make a lot of comments in between, saying that when we are coming from source and essence, we are like the light and the rats are scattering away. What I want to say is that in this regard, we have much more power while we are still, and it doesn't really take much to get there. So EED, or learning EED in this respect, really feels like I'm unraveling all of what I have been socialized as, in order to get back to the simpleness of, okay, this is just in me. And
yeah. So yeah, it's a simple thing to talk about, not an easy thing to do. And yes, many people get frustrated when they, learn all the EED processes, because there is this unraveling, there's this taking away, unlearning the layer by layer, unlearning the social conditioning to get into that real simple place of connecting to source in a clean, congruent way, and then being able to sustain that, practice it. Very possible to do, but it can be a very uncomfortable process, because it's so much easier to hide under these layers and just play games and manipulate each other. So, but in the end, yeah, you do become a clean light, and that doesn't mean you're better. It just means that you're cleaner, more direct, more resilient, and you maintain your free will, and you allow the free will in others, and you play with everyone's free will. But we don't need to control each other. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
You have to have that will to set yourself free. Yeah, you have to have will.
And you need to be telling the truth to yourself. Right? Like a simple exercise in creating congruency is, what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? What am I doing right now? What am I saying right now? And then if you get 4 different answers, okay, so I'm not congruent. Now pick one, just one, and say, now let's line up all the levels. So I'm thinking negatively. Well, what is that negative thought? I'm critical, I'm sad, and I'm critical, and I'm angry. I'm thinking angry, critical thoughts. Great. Now, well, then what's the feeling of anger? What's the posture of anger? What are the words of those angers and criticisms? Instead of saying, well, I'm gonna show that I'm a nice person, but I'm feeling sad inside and I'm thinking critically. Do you understand? Like pick one, line it up. There's a freedom in that. And then you can move to the next moment. And now I'm sad. And then now I'm relaxed. And now I'm happy. And learn to line them up. That's one of the first exercises to do.
So when I learn to differentiate when I'm happy or when I'm sad and how it affects me, then it enables me to be way more concise in my own emotions, or to understand, when I understand my emotions like that, and vice versa, to express myself towards the other people around. So they can get a much better understanding of who I am, because I'm not only coming from the authenticity in the moment, but I'm going towards the source connection that is actually fueling the whole moment.
Right. So when you do this congruency exercise, don't ask yourself, why am I thinking or feeling or doing this? Just say, what am I doing? Let it be exactly what it is, line it up, and then say, what am I now experiencing when everything is lined up? What now am I connecting to within myself? That will start leading you to source. You can also ask, now that I'm in line, how am I okay? What am I enjoying? That again can bring you to source, so that you're not in criticism of yourself, okay? Ooh, I shouldn't be angry here. Now you're incongruent because you're trying to be two states at once. Do you understand? I'm angry, I shouldn't be angry. Pick one, all right? I'm sad, I shouldn't be sad. Well, if you shouldn't be sad, what are you? Or what should you be? Well, I should be happy and positive. Well, then fine. Think happy, positive, feel happy, positive, be in a happy, positive posture. Are you? Well, no, it's hard to do. Well, then what are you, right? You have to be really disciplined and honest with yourself, not obligating yourself to be something else than what you are. So it boils down to basic acceptance. Does that make sense? You're smiling pretty big there, Alina. What's going on?
I was just remembering, okay, one exercise we did in one module when I don't even remember who was, but had to choose whether to sit in or outside a certain, feeling. And what I remember, in the end, it just was so confused and immediately just burst into laugh. So when the person burst into laugh, then practically dropped the game in which remained.
So there's the effect of a moment of total congruency.
Exactly.
You surrendered into, here's what I'm experiencing, laughter, not hiding it, not suppressing, not doing it, just total laughter. Something's true here. And it drops your relationship into a more fluid, congruent relationship, that moment of truth. So there can be congruency between people. Yeah.
I would like to ask Joy, is it an option to create another session for the subject of vulnerability?
What I'm thinking of doing right now is leaving this here now as a part one. I'll stop the recording and then record again as a part two, the vulnerability part, okay? So any final comments on authenticity here, then I will stop this as part one.
The last thought that I had was there's really not so much in it for the ego persona, like for my conditioning, for my gameplay, for my that wants to win. Because when I'm authentic, it might be a little bit better for the other person, might be a little better for me. That's not mattering anymore. So I gain a lot of freedom because I can be unconditional, while at the same time, actually everyone gains like that. But the only thing why we wouldn't want it is because we're not used to it.
Well, if I'm playing to win, it's going to be really uncomfortable to be authentic unless I'm under control of it, right? But to be unconditional, I might lose. So I'm not going to go there. When you are in a natural place of being unconditional with generosity of spirit, connected to source, etc., there's no game to play here. So it's not about win-lose. It's about creating, just creating. And that you can still be willful, you can still guide, but you're guiding and responding, guiding and responding. It's an act of co-creation, not I am in control of the creation. Do you understand? The control issue dissolves, as well as the validation issue.
So I just wonder, just to add on that, Troy, if you're okay with that here. I wonder that control issue you mentioned just about a second ago, that it to dissolve. I don't get that, because I think it's just the other way around. If I ask myself the question, what makes someone authentic? This implies by its very nature that I'm interested in that I want to change something, that I want to get pulled in, or I want to push for, or any means getting at that. So how can that not be controlled?
Well, I'm not saying you lose your authority. You can still hold authority. But when I'm exercising control over you, I'm not giving you choice.
So it's...
I'm forcing you in a direction. It's like I'm giving you an offer you can't refuse. And if you refuse it, I'll suddenly feel like I'm losing power. Therefore, I have to force the issue on you. There's where I'm being controlling. When I'm in a resilient, congruent, connected space, I have limitless possibilities of how I can respond to what's going on. And I can guide the situation, but I'm not forcing it. So I'm respecting a natural autonomy. And I'm not losing anything if you don't respond in the way I expected.
So for me, just the word unconditional springs to me. At the same time, autonomy. So it's an unconditional choice. So I would be still okay if I don't pursue that path, that trajectory.
Look, I can walk into your office, Benjamin, you're my boss, and I can walk in with this natural authenticity, and I can say, let's have a discussion about my future at the company. And I want to apply for a promotion. I want to, get a higher position. I want, a higher salary. And then I can be transparent about my skills. I can be transparent about how I feel, about what's going on with the job. I can be congruent with what I promise. I can be congruent with what I know I have been delivering and will deliver. I can show you all my strengths, all of that, with nothing to prove here except, look, I merit this new position in my opinion. And if I'm walking in there thinking, you better say yes, because look, I'm showing you all this stuff, you better say yes. I'm not being authentic. I'm looking authentic, but being manipulative. If I'm coming in from unconditional and you say at the end, no, I don't think you're competent enough, I've got to respond with ability on that, meaning, okay, now let's negotiate. What can I work on? Or, well, what are my options? And if you say there are no options here, then I can still respond with that. And I can say, well, then I respectfully resign. No feeling of guilt or shame on you.
Actually, from authenticity, our strengths for the game mechanics can stem from. Like, I can be authentic and just activate the game or surrender to the game, just go on with the game and play on with the game, as long as the other part is pathetic and not resilient. I can just act as if everything is fine, but still be authentic in the situation. While if I choose to swap roles or to give away the prize, I'm still authentic, but then I'm not following the game anymore.
It all comes down to, Paul, are you still playing to win?
Well, you could.
Well, no. Then you're weaponizing authenticity. That's what I mean. We'll have to look. I'm going to stop the recording soon. We're going to look at game dream level specifically here, and show like, okay, so what's the difference? But when you're in an unconditional place, it's not about play to win. It is about create, is what I'm going to say. And I can, in my conversation with Benjamin, asking for that promotion and raise of salary, he says no. And I can say, I'm really angry. This is unfair. That's fine. But it doesn't mean that I'm trying to manipulate him into something. I'm expressing myself. I'm being genuine here, right? So the point is, when we're being unconditional, we're not being authentic to try to control anything, or being authentic to gain validation so we can control something. I think that's the main point here. Because if I'm trying to do that, I'm using authenticity as a weapon to gain something.
That makes completely sense to me right now, what you mentioned. If I just may, Alina, if I was so there's a very context matters. So it's context sensitive. So
yeah.
what you just elaborated on was what specifically the control issue, right? So what is the soul of control? I'm not allowing that other option. So I'm not accepting that. So acting out of that context colors authenticity, weaponizes it basically.
Yeah.
So if the context of control is absent, it's not necessarily that authenticity is a weapon.
Right.
But you go with that. Just
yeah, and so I would. It all points back to being unconditional here. So for whatever I do, I'm not expecting an acknowledgement in return. I'm not expecting agreement in return. I'm not expecting anything in return. Okay, I give what I give, and then I create from that, from whatever the response is, and I'm agile enough to keep creating instead of expecting you to create something back that I have in mind. Do you understand?
You don't need that as a compensation for your non-connection to your source. Once you're connected to your source, you're unconditional basically.
That's right. You're unconditional, and you don't need that compensation. It's not even an issue. Yeah,
right.
That's a great way to put it. So,
which would spawn up this is a very control context, which then would weaponize authenticity.
That's right. And it's a real fine line, and it can become a slippery slope, right? So any final words here on authenticity, and then I'll close part one.